dastardly and cowardly hate crime, clearly by a racist individual, has rocked the nation and the world as news spread like wildfire of a poor young Muslim girl who was walking to school when a man attacked her by cutting off her hijab with scissors.
I feel confused, scared, terrified.
Kaula Noman's walk to school turned into a nightmare when she says a man came up behind her, pulled down the hood of her coat, and cut her hijab.
And I turned around and I saw him with his scissors, and he ran away.
But it wasn't over. Noman says she and her brother crossed the street to join a group of kids, but the man followed and cut her hijab again.
I felt scared and worried about my sister and think what's going to happen next to her.
For Noman's mother, it was heart-wrenching.
I'm just so happy she's safe. I'm very frustrated and I'm angry, but I don't, you know what, we believe in peace and Canada. Like, I'm so proud to be a Canadian, and I want to give him the same message. Why are you thinking like this? Like, you know, we're all together in this.
Canadian politicians were swift to respond. Premier of Ontario Kathleen Wynne tweeted, "This is a cowardly act of hatred, and it has no place in Ontario. This does not represent who we are. We must stand firm in our support of this young girl who was assaulted simply for wearing a hijab." Toronto's Mayor John Tory said, "I am shocked and appalled to learn a student wearing a hijab was assaulted on the way to school this morning in Scarborough." And the Prime Minister of Canada himself even commented on the matter on Twitter and on national television.
My heart goes out to the young girl who was attacked, seemingly for her religion. I can't imagine how afraid she must have been. I want her and her family and her friends and community to know that that is not what Canada is, and that is not who Canadians are.
Well, you're right about that, Justin. This isn't what Canada is or who Canadians are, because the fact of the matter is, none of this was real. The little girl was lying, and it was the Canadian taxpayer-funded news agencies that produced propaganda and fake news for a political agenda. And I'm quite frankly sick and tired of the hypocrisy that surrounds the MSM and our Canadian politicians in everything they do.
It was just on Friday, as you mentioned, that she spoke to the media, shared her stories of being attacked not once but twice by a man in his 20s. She said that he ripped off her hood, that he tried to cut off her hijab. Turns out today we now know from police that this account of events, it never happened. This is a story that made international headlines. It was carried in newspapers and websites right around the world. And of course, the Prime Minister even weighed in on this incident. And that's part of why police felt that they needed to come out today and set the record straight. Here's what Mark Pugash had to say.
We thought, given all the attention that this received, and it was a huge amount of attention, and I understand why, on media, social media, locally, nationally, and internationally, people were scared, people were worried. We felt it was up to us, as soon as we had this conclusion, to put it out there, and that's what we've done.
Too little, too late. The damage has already been done in the minds of the masses, and I'm here to tell you today that that was the plan all along. This is all part of a continuing propaganda campaign designed to create animosity between the Canadian people and the Muslim community in a boiling frog type scenario here, so that they can more easily manipulate us with their tactics of providing order out of chaos. Consider the case with Alexander Bissonnette and the attack on a mosque last year in Quebec. To this day, there has still been absolutely no mention of a motive whatsoever. But this hasn't stopped the virtue signaling coming from Justin Trudeau and the rest of them as they grandstood on this event, calling for a need to end Islamophobia. With zero mention of a motive, this has already been planted in the minds of the masses that it was a terrorist attack, a hate crime against Muslims for their religion. I went to Quebec and conducted my own investigation, and so, for all we know, Alexander Bissonnette was actually gay, and this was a breakup gone bad. For all we know, Bissonnette was intimately involved with the Muslim, and the relationship was kept secret by the Muslim out of fear that his mosque would obviously strongly disapprove. And for all we know, the Muslim boyfriend chose Islam over the relationship, and this was a breakup turned tragic. But the bottom line is, an official motive has not been announced yet. But despite that fact, we still have things like Motion 103, which passed the House of Commons, that seeks to condemn Islamophobia as a hate crime. But the fact is, a phobia implies an irrational fear of something. But there's nothing irrational about rejecting a religion and a culture that is at odds with our Western Christian standards. So when it comes to the Hijab Scissor Hoax, not only has the Canadian government been caught producing propaganda and fake news here, not only have they insulted every Muslim out there who has actually had to deal with this sort of thing, because it undermines the validity of their claims now. But on top of all of that, the Canadian government has actually broken the law here and violated their very own criminal code. Section 140 of the Canadian Criminal Code states that it is a crime to, quote, do anything intended to cause some other person to be suspected of having committed an offense that the other person has not committed, or to divert suspicion from himself, and reporting that an offense has been committed when it has not been committed. And I don't normally get upset, folks. I'm actually a rather mild-mannered individual, but this case has my blood boiling, because I'm the one who always gets accused of producing fake news for informing the world about some of the things that are actually going on. Meanwhile, they are actually producing fake news, which is manipulating the minds of the masses to go along with their own enslavement at any cost. At Press for Truth, we are on the front lines of this information war. And unless we have continued support from you, the viewers, it's going to be quite the challenge to undermine all the damage that the mainstream media has already done. So if you appreciate the work that we're doing here, please consider making a donation today at pressfortruth.ca/donate, because we don't have the corporate backing and the funding that the MSM gets, but what we do have is you. So please check the links in the description below to find out how you can get involved and to help us out by either donating or by becoming a PFT member or a PFT patron. Thanks for watching, my friends. Click that like button and share this video if you found the information to be useful. And stay tuned, we've got more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.